Short while ago, we called Arkansas for the president. No surprise there. But going behind the voting, Bill Schneider, what does it look like when Arkansans came out today and talked to pollsters?
Well, clearly in Arkansas, friends and neighbors counted for a lot. They voted for their favorite son, Bill Clinton. But we asked them an interesting question. Remember Whitewater? That's in Arkansas. And we asked them, do you think Bill Clinton has told the truth or did not tell the truth about Whitewater? And guess what they said? No, Bill Clinton did not tell the truth about Whitewater. But about 1 in 5 who felt that way voted for him anyway, and he carried the state. Now, let's take a look at Texas, a big win for Bob Dole in Texas. Now, Hispanic voters are a critical constituency. They were 15% of those who voted in Texas today. 3/4 of them voted for Bill Clinton. A lot of new voters in Texas. Immigration reform, welfare reform had been issues that a lot of them resented about the Republicans, even though Bill Clinton signed the immigration reform, the welfare reform bill. He said he wanted it modified so it wouldn't be as tough on legal immigrants, and clearly Hispanic voters in Texas stuck with the president. But they weren't enough to carry the state of Texas, because look at what white voters did. In this case, white voters clearly showed a preference for Bob Dole by 2 to 1. And that was what made the difference. They were 72% of the Texas voters. And finally, in Florida, we found that the big turnaround, the reason that Florida switched and went to Bill Clinton this time, was a heavy vote for Clinton among voters over 65. Bill Clinton carried 56% of senior citizens in Florida, and they were 22% of the voters in that state.
Before we leave Arkansas, I just want to say we're going to watch very closely. The president got 52% of the vote in Arkansas in 1992. Running for David Pryor's seat, the retiring Democrat, are the Attorney General, Democrat Winston Bryan, and Republican Congressman Tim Hutchinson. The question is whether or not Clinton will get enough of the vote in his own state to keep that seat Democratic. It's going to be interesting to watch that.
That's a real test of coattails.
Absolutely. Judy.
Yeah, cliffhanger. And we have a little bit of news, and that is the state of Alabama is going to send a Republican to the United States Senate to take the place of Democrat Howell Heflin. The man who's won is Jeff Sessions. He is, as you can see, he has defeated Roger Bedford. This is one that was watched closely. Sessions was ahead, Ken, for a while, but there was some doubt here at the end.
Well, this evens up the evening as far as the Senate is concerned, because up until Sessions is declared the winner in Alabama, the Democrats were up 1 Senate seat. They'd taken the New Hampshire Republican Senate seat. Now it's back to even in terms of the Senate race. You know, it's very interesting, one of the things that we just saw, and that is that gender gap. How do you explain a 20-point gender gap in the Massachusetts Senate race? And is it indicative of what we're going to see in the presidential race as this unfolds? I mean, that's what the early polls told us.
Is it possible to answer that question now?
Well, we'll see what happens when we get the final results in, but this could be the first race since 1960 in which men vote for one candidate, presumably Bob Dole, and women vote for Bill Clinton. We've had races where the men and women have differed in their level of support, but they've always voted for the winner. This could be a case where they vote for opposite candidates.
But in the talk about the gender gap, please do not just say women voted for candidate X because he was pro-choice. It's more than just abortion as an issue.
Oh, it's much more than that. It has a lot to do with the
It has-
economy and with the government safety.
And I remind you,
that, in fact, was when
in
women
Massachusetts, Weld and Kerry are both ardently pro-choice on the abortion
That's
issue.
right. That's a
So-
neutral issue in Massachusetts, but it's elderly issues, it's the economy, it's family leave, it's education. Bill Clinton made John Kerry a long ad right at the last in which he talked about all of those issues. And one more thing, by the way,
Sure.
in Massachusetts, Hillary Clinton's positives are 64%.
Well, she went to college in Massachusetts,
Yes.
Wellesley.
We have another call. Thomas Jefferson State. CNN declares that John Warner, the incumbent Republican, has beaten off a challenge. He will be going back to Washington for the Republican Party. And you might recall in the 1992 race, John Warner brought down the wrath of his party when he opposed Oliver North getting his party's nomination in the Senate contest there. That's with 32% of the precincts in. Put a check mark very shortly by Mr. Warner, the one on top. He's going back to the United States
We
Senate.
won't have to listen to any more jokes about Warner versus Warner, or the Warner brothers, with all apologies to Frank Sesno.
But he definitely is a profile in courage.
Yep. He of course had a lot of appeal to Democrats and independents in Virginia because he took on Oliver North and created a civil war within the Republican Party. This is a big vindication for Senator Warner.
He ran unopposed last time. Last time the Democrats didn't even file against him.
Yep.
Plus, he's an ex-husband of Elizabeth Taylor. Perhaps either roses or
One of
telegraph.
many. One of many.
I'm sure that helped. I'm sure that helped.
On that note, we're going to pause for just a moment. We're coming right back to CNN election headquarters here in the atrium at the Omni. Look at these hard-working CNNers. They'll be doing it all night. CNN declares a winner in the Tar Heel state. Bob Dole has won North Carolina.
North Carolina voted for George Bush by the narrowest of margins last time, and the Republicans have retained it.
It's a narrow margin this time, and maybe the reason is that they went for Bob Dole is that it's the home of Elizabeth Hannaford Dole.
That's right, from Salisbury, North Carolina. And we're sure that that had something to do with it. We assume that had something to do with it. Now, there are a group of people who've been just itching to get a word in edgewise tonight. They are in Washington, D.C. At least I think that's where they are. They are the Capitol Gang, and let's go to them now.
Welcome to this special night, election night edition of Capitol Gang, and we are itching to go. I'm Al Hunt with Robert Novak, Margaret Carlson, and Cato Byrne. Bob, Bill Clinton, first Democratic president to be reelected, I think it's obvious now, in 60 years. Was it a triumph of party, philosophy, or persona?
Definitely not party, definitely not philosophy, a little bit persona, but mostly strategy. He stole the Republican issues, nothing bad has happened, and the Republicans ran a god-awful presidential campaign.
You'll buy that, Margaret?
Philosophy, reducing the deficit paid off. Persona, Bob, to quote you and Lee Atwater, the person who smiles tends to win. Towards the end of this, Bob Dole in the leisure wear jacket, the hoarse voice, a little bit happier than he was a week ago, but still just not the kind of person that voters are going to cling to. As Jay Leno said, he's going to travel this country until he's rejected by every single voter. That last 96 hours, I don't think really helped.
Kate, I think this thing was over months ago, maybe even a year ago.
Yeah, the shape of this race has been obvious for months. Bob Dole's own weaknesses as a candidate is no small part of it. Much of this is Bill Clinton's luck to have drawn Bob Dole,
right.
It being the Republican Party's turn to get the nomination that Bob Dole sought for so many years. But to the extent it's a triumph and it appears that he's winning, it's a lonely triumph. I mean, it doesn't appear, based on results on the East Coast, that too many other Democrats are going to be benefiting from the Clinton win.
Let me ask you this, Kate. The one thing we do notice, however, is a gender gap almost in every, even the state-by-state races. The Clinton is probably winning the female vote by about 20 points, and they're about splitting even with the male vote. Also, you see that in what we've seen in the Senate races so far. Is that a permanent condition now?
This is going to, it's certainly there between Clinton and Dole, but this is going to be one of the most interesting aspects to watch tonight, I think. William Weld, up in Massachusetts, who's very liberal on social issues, which, right, according to conventional analysis, should appeal to women. 20 points he lost the women's vote by, 20, and tied among men with John Kerry. Phil Gramm in Texas carried the women's vote by 8 or 9 points, even though Bob Dole didn't. You know, Phil Gramm is more conservative than Bob Dole.
I think the women's vote is driven by economics and not those social issues.
Everybody has been talking about the gender gap for years, and it always kind of closes up on election day. It didn't close up this time. Right. You know, the dirty little secret is that when all the votes are counted, Bob Dole will have a small plurality of the male vote in this country. But what is really something is that in state after state that we have seen exit polls on, the gender gap exists, as you mentioned, in Massachusetts. And I'll tell you something right now, if the Republicans say, well, we're going to fight the gender gap by adopting all the little teeny-weeny government programs of Bill Clinton, I think that's the way to disrupt it.
Bob, I'm glad you're anti-teeny-weeny.
The teeny-weeny programs. M2, E2, Medicare, Medicaid, Environment, Education. Pounded on it.
Let me stay on the first for a second, Margaret, and that is if there's a gender gap, there's also a geezer gap. It appears that the Democrats have done much better among the elderly.
Oh, wait, Bob wants to speak to the geezer gap.
No.
Listen, I got in trouble 4 years ago, on this program. I was talking about the geezer vote had elected Bill Clinton. So be careful. Watch your language.
But the one state that Clinton has carried that he did not carry last time was Florida. Now, isn't that the Medicare issue?
There's a message. It's totally the Medicare issue. They They believed what the Democrats said about the Republicans, which was that they were going to cut Medicare. They were going to slow the growth, but it looks like a cut, and it worked in Florida, and the geezer vote was
It's a
his.
little early. It's a little early to say that. Bob Dole was really not identified with slashing Medicare. Bob Dole is not a radical member of Newt's team. It remains to be seen.
He was associated without not voting for it from that very effective
look
ad.
at John Warner in Virginia. John Warner's winning the Senate race in a walkaway. He voted for everything on Medicare in the past 2 years that Bob Dole did, and yet it didn't seem to hurt John Warner.
Can we say it's not very gallant to say so, because Bob Dole was a great fighter and he fought hard to the end. He was just an absolutely terrible candidate. He was too old. He looked bad. He could never express a vision. He was always preoccupied with process. That has to have something to do with the victory for Bill Clinton, don't you think?
No, I think it did. I think it maybe was a point or two, but I still think that most of it was, you know, was the economics and the Republican.
Out there when you look at that primary, primary field. Steve Forbes, your guy, would have done worse than Bob Dole.
I don't believe that.
We'll know better when we see whether or not Bill Clinton breaks 50% of the vote. If it turns out that at least half of the American public still are unhappy with Bill Clinton in the White House, it says to me that there probably was a win for somebody else.
I think the House outcome, which we probably won't know till about midnight tonight, if by then, I think will be terribly instructive. I agree with you, Kate, and from now on when we come back, I'm going to try to be like Bob Novak, much more sensitive about these various issues. But we'll be back later in the evening. Now let's go back to Atlanta for continuing election night coverage.
Okay.
All right.
And the polls are closing in about 2 minutes. We're going to have word for you on the presidential race after the polls have closed. But if you're in a time zone where you still can vote, please do so.
That's right. We've got 12 states with the polls closing, 10 more states with lots and lots of voters, with many issues to be decided, many state races, not to mention the presidential and the congressional races, gubernatorial races, still to be decided. So even though we and others may be calling this race based on our projections, we urge people to go to the polls and vote, because voting matters.
The 9 o'clock hour in the past has been the hour traditionally where the presidential race has been decided and declared.
Okay, don't go away. In 2 minutes, we'll be right back after this local break with the latest on Election Night '96.